Touching redemption revealed, Black CEO overcomes insult at Gala, inspires 3B charitable turnaround. David Carter stood in the grand ballroom, the glow of chandeliers bathing the elite crowd in a golden radiance. The hum of laughter and clinking glasses created a symphony of affluence. He felt an ache in his chest as he glanced around at the titans of industry, not just for his accomplishments, but because, standing among them, he could hardly believe he belonged. From the tight-knit neighborhood he had climbed from, the path had been rough, paved with sweat and tenacity, guided by his loving grandmother's unwavering belief in him. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of triumph. As he engaged in small talk, a familiar face approached. Harrison Malloy, a powerful mogul with an unyielding reputation, made a beeline towards David. The moment their eyes locked, a hush fell over the crowd. Harrison was known for his sharp tongue and even sharper criticisms. "Ah, David. How quaint to see you mingling with the big boys," he remarked, the tone dripping with thinly veiled mockery. Gasps echoed, and David felt the heat rise to his cheeks. His heart raced, the sting of humiliation shooting through him. Was he nothing more than a novelty act to these powerful men? David's mind spiraled, memories flooding him, the moments spent working late nights, sacrificing friendships, the relentless grind to prove that he was more than just a product of his environment. Yet here he stood, stripped of dignity, his achievements dismissed like a child's play. The laughter faded, leaving a hollow void that constricted around his chest. As murmurs spread, he felt eyes boring into him, judging. Friends he once knew seemed distant, their support disappearing with his rise. Pain twisted in his gut, a jarring reminder that success often invited loneliness. Yet, beneath the crushing humiliation, something ignited within him. Fighting tears, he thought of his grandmother's teachings: integrity, hard work, resilience. Returning home lifted his spirits, the warm embrace of his community filling him with strength. Each nod and smile rekindled the fire within. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. David sat with childhood friends over the weekend, the tension from the gala still simmering in his mind. Inspired by their conversations, he birthed an idea: a groundbreaking charitable campaign aimed at dismantling economic inequality and offering mentorship to at-risk youth. The community rallied, igniting hope and unity. David became more than a CEO, he became a beacon for change. As he prepared to confront Harrison, an electric energy rippled through him. The encounter would be their reckoning. It could shift the tides of prejudice in the business world. With everything on the line, David could feel the weight of his past experiences intertwining with the promise of the future. Would he stand tall despite the shadows looming over him, or would doubt consume him once more? As the day of reckoning approached, tension swelled in the air, thick with anticipation. David's heart raced, not just for himself, but for every child who had ever felt the crippling effects of limitation. This was their moment too. Would David seize it or let it slip away? The answer seemed to hang in the air, waiting, just like his dreams. David stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie as he mentally prepared for the day ahead. The tailored suit felt heavy, like a mantle weighing on his shoulders. Today was crucial. It was the day he would confront Harrison Malloy and the outdated views he represented. The reflection staring back at him didn't just reflect a businessman, it embodied purpose. The ballroom was reserved again, this time for a pivotal charity gala that would launch his initiative. David knew that this gathering of powerful executives could lead to monumental change, but the fear of failure lingered at the back of his mind like a persistent shadow. As guests arrived, the atmosphere vibrated with a mixture of excitement and unease. David welcomed each person, exchanging pleasantries. But he could feel their eyes sizing him up, as if they were trying to reconcile his success with their preconceived notions. A familiar voice pulled him from his thoughts. David. It was Marissa, a fellow community advocate. Her smile radiated warmth as she approached. I wouldn't miss this for the world. You're about to shake things up. Her faith gave him a boost, inspiring renewed confidence. They discussed the campaign, the programs that would mentor underprivileged youth and how these small steps would combat systemic inequality. Marissa's passion was contagious, and it fueled David's desire to effect real change. As the evening progressed, David took center stage, his heart pounding like drumbeats in a parade. He glanced at the faces illuminated by anticipation. He cleared his throat, the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. Good evening. He began, his voice steady. Tonight, we embark on a journey to create opportunities where there were once barriers. Together, we can empower the next generation to transcend their circumstances. Applause erupted as David shared his vision. He painted powerful images: children rising against adversity, families thriving through support and education. As people listened, he noticed a shift. Their curiosity transformed into engagement. He was no longer a novelty act, but a visionary leading a pivotal movement. Yet, just as he began gaining momentum, the long shadow of Harrison loomed. David could see him among the audience, arms crossed with a smirk that hinted mockery. A knot twisted in David's stomach, but he pressed on, fueled by thoughts of the kids they could inspire and uplift. I once read that success is not determined by the riches you amass, but the lives you touch, David continued passionately. Let us redefine what wealth truly means, and let us build together a community that reflects the diversity and potential of our nation. Harrison couldn't resist any longer. He stood up, interrupting with a scoff. Is this really about equality, David? Or is it just another ploy to line your pockets? The room fell silent, the tension palpable. David looked straight at Harrison, feeling every ounce of doubt and pressure coalesce into a fierce resolve. This is not a ploy, Harrison. This is about hope. Hope that everyone, regardless of their background, can have a chance to thrive. And I invite you to be part of that change. With that, the murmurs of the crowd intensified, a mix of support and disbelief. David's heart raced again, not with fear, but with determination. In that moment, he realized it wasn't just about standing up to Harrison, it was about standing up for every child dreaming of a better future. But as the energy swirled in the room, David couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was just the beginning of a much larger struggle. Would he be able to silence the naysayers? As the evening continued, he wondered, in the fight for equity, how far was he willing to go, and what cost would it demand from him? As the heated whispers washed over the room, David's heart sank momentarily. Harrison Malloy was a seasoned titan, and the dismissive jab felt like a brick aimed right at his core. He took a deep breath, feeling the heat from the spotlights glancing off his skin, and pressed on. Let us talk about what truly matters, David replied, his voice steadying as he sought to reclaim the narrative. This isn't about me. It's about a future that we can all support together. Our goal is not only to see change but to create it. Today is an invitation for each of you not just to donate, but to join a cause that could change lives. The pulse in the room shifted slightly. These were the moments when leaders could reveal their true selves. New murmurs filled the air as David continued. Together, we can break the cycle. It's not enough to just wait for change to happen. It's our responsibility to build it. Marissa's eyes sparkled with pride as she nodded along, and David caught her encouragement like a lifeline. He pushed forward with vigor, weaving in stories of young people he had met, faces full of hope and determination. Each anecdote brought a tender realization about the strength hidden within seemingly impossible circumstances. But amid the unfolding sincerity, Harrison leaned forward, an eyebrow raised as if debating whether to interject again. David could feel the tightening tension simmering just beneath the surface. Look, Harrison interrupted again, this time more insidiously, I appreciate your passion, David. But can we truly believe every person can achieve success? There are just some who will always remain beneath us. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and David felt the weight of their anticipation crash around him like waves. The challenge was issued, and the arena was set for a duel not with swords, but with words. Some may believe that, Harrison, David replied, his voice calm but laced with fervor. But each of us here has the power to create our destinies. I stand here not because of what I've received, but because of what I've given back. The measures of success aren't confined to boardrooms. They're defined in the lives we uplift. Each word vibrated with conviction, yet Harrison's smirk remained. The challenge ignited David's resolve further. He could not succumb to the cynicism that threatened to engulf him. As David spoke about the initiatives that would provide not just mentorship, but also tangible pathways to education and employment, faces in the audience softened. He saw glimmers of hope, he felt the shift begin to take hold. A projector displayed images of youth engaged in workshops, smiles illuminating the screen. The more he spoke, the more he caught glances of agreement, heads nodding in rhythm with his words. It wasn't just about confronting Harrison, it was about igniting a movement fueled by shared determination. But even as he felt the tide turning, a part of him sensed more hurdles ahead. Would they falter if their commitment was tested? Would the naysayers continue to cast shadows, threatening to snuff out the growing light? With each passing moment, the clamoring voices of hope and doubt danced in his mind, vying for dominance. Are you with us? David raised his voice, looking straight into the eyes of the executives, firming his stance. Let us be the changemakers we talk about. Let us rise together. The applause thundered, echoing through the lavish hall, but beneath it all, a deeper question loomed like an uninvited guest. Was he truly prepared for the battle ahead, knowing that every victory came at a steep price? As the applause filled his ears and his heart brimmed with determination, David remembered the kids he spoke for. Their dreams depended on moments like this. With renewed resolve, he held his breath, knowing the real challenge wasn't just how to rally support, but how to transform the very cynical hearts they aimed to reach. Let us continue this conversation tonight, he concluded, stepping down from the stage, his mind racing. Would he find allies among those in the room, or would he stand alone against the rising tide of resistance? As David stepped off the stage, his heart raced, still pulsing with adrenaline from the adrenaline-fueled confrontation. The bright lights faded into the background, but the heat of the moment lingered. He swept his gaze over the crowd, searching for familiar faces amid the sea of attendees. Marissa met him at the edge of the stage, a bright smile breaking through the lingering tension. You were incredible, David, she said, her enthusiasm bubbling over. The way you took him on, it was like watching a spotlight chase away the shadows. Thanks, Marissa. I had to say something. His voice was still unsteady, betraying the whirlwind of emotions he was grappling with. But what if it's not enough? Marissa's smile faded slightly, replaced by an earnest look. It's more than enough. You lit a spark. People were listening, you can feel it. David nodded, though doubt still gnawed at him. What was a spark without kindling? He took a deep breath, forcing back the apprehension settling in his chest. He spotted a few executives approaching, and he braced himself. These were the people he needed to convince. As they approached, the tension in the air thickened. One man stepped forward, extending a hand, his expression a mix of respect and disbelief. David, I didn't expect that boldness tonight. You made a compelling case, he said, his voice steady. Thank you, David replied, shaking his hand firmly, encouraged by this moment of recognition. It's time we all invested not just money, but ourselves into lifting others. More voices joined, murmurs and comments that felt like threads weaving into a burgeoning tapestry of support. Still, in the back of his mind, Harrison's dismissive words echoed, casting a long shadow. David couldn't ignore the unyielding grip of doubt that lingered in the shadows, daring him to falter. As conversations swirled around him, David felt buoyed by every shared laugh and nod of agreement. They were beginning to see it, that change was possible. Each promise of support felt like a promise to the children counting on this transformation. Their dreams quietly echoed back to him, weaving into the night, but just as the excitement surged, David spotted Harrison on the other side of the room, a smug grin plastered on his face. The older man seemed to relish the moment, watching them as if examining prey. David's stomach churned. "Hey, why don't we grab a drink? I think we need a plan for the action items from tonight," Marissa suggested, sensing his unease. "Yeah, right." But David's thoughts were racing. What about the others? Will they really step up? Will they follow through? As if reading his mind, Marissa put a hand on his arm. "One step at a time. You ignited something in them, David. Trust that." He took a breath, the warmth of her support pushing him forward. But as they headed toward the bar, his eyes still darted to Harrison. The man was far from finished. "Tonight isn't just a starting point, is it?" David murmured more to himself than anyone else. "No, it's not. This is just the beginning," Marissa replied firmly. And in that moment, he felt it, the flicker of something greater, something that could transcend not only his ambitions but also the barriers of perception that had held so many back. A new kind of energy surged within him, igniting hope despite the brewing storms outside the Gala walls. Before he could voice any more of his doubts, a hush fell over the crowd as a new speaker took the stage, signaling the start of the evening's second half. The sharp contrast of the unexpected moment forced David to focus. Yet as the lights beamed down again, a familiar name echoed across the hall. Harrison Malloy was about to take the mic. David clenched his jaw. What would he say now? Could it be a challenge or a rebuttal? And most importantly, could David prepare himself for whatever storm was about to unfold? As Harrison stepped into the spotlight, a palpable tension rippled through the crowd. David's heart hammered in his chest. He could feel the collective breath of anticipation, the crowd leaning in, eager for the next act of this unfolding drama. Harrison's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Well, what an evening we've had so far," he began, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Boldness, they say, is commendable. But is it wise? Or simply reckless?" He glanced around the room, a triumphant smile on his lips. "I appreciate the fervor, David, but let us not confuse bravado with real strategy." The words hit David like a slap. He felt heat rise to his face. Harrison was intentionally undermining everything he had just built up on that stage. Anger mixed with frustration, and for a moment, David considered walking out. What was the use of fighting a battle where the opponent thrived on manipulation? Marissa squeezed his arm, her grip reassuring. "Stay focused, David," she whispered, her voice barely audible over Harrison's droning commentary. "I'm not trying to crush dreams," Harrison continued, his gaze locking onto David's with a predatory glint. "But let us be real here, without a solid foundation, dreams can crumble as easily as they're made. We need pragmatism, not idealism. Is passion enough to drive results?" David's stomach churned. Was he passionate? Did that even matter if Harrison wielded influence like a weapon, sharp and dangerous? But then the image of those kids flashed in his mind, their eagerness, their hope. He couldn't let Harrison's words, steeped in intimidation, dictate the night or overshadow what had begun. With every unjust jab Harrison threw, David's resolve strengthened. It was time to reclaim the narrative. He stepped forward, catching Marissa's approving nod. "Respectfully, Harrison," David interjected, his voice steady and loud enough to reach the far corners of the hall. "It's true that dreams need a solid foundation. But to build that foundation, we must first believe there is something worth building. We must believe in each other, especially those who need a lift the most. Change starts with passion, it's the heart of innovation." A murmur vibrated through the crowd, the energy shifting. Heads bobbed in agreement, eyes lighting up as if they discovered a truth buried beneath layers of doubt. David could see it, like a wildfire spreading, the flicker of hope igniting in others as they embraced his words. Harrison's expression shifted, morphed from smug confidence into mild surprise. It was a crack in his armor, an opening David had never expected to see. Passion, Harrison retorted, struggling to find footing. But passion won't pay the bills, David. You can't build a business on goodwill alone. Perhaps not a business, David said, his heart racing. But we can build a community. We can lift each other up in ways that reach far beyond profit. We're talking about lives here, not just numbers on a balance sheet. The audience erupted into applause, a wave of support washing over David, fueling his determination. Harrison's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, and the crowd was finally rallying behind what David stood for. Remember this moment, David shouted over the cheering crowd, because we're just getting started. As the applause echoed, David felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with something else: clarity. In that haze of vulnerability, he had discovered something: it was possible to speak truth even while standing on shaky ground. Harrison's eyes narrowed, and David sensed the challenge lingering in the air. The night was far from over, and though David had taken a stand, he could sense that a counterattack was brewing behind Harrison's steely gaze. With his emotions still bubbling from the confrontation, David knew deep down that this was only the beginning. There was more at stake than just a gala speech. The room felt electric with possibility, yet also tinged with uncertainty. What would Harrison do next? What would this night reveal about their futures? David's heart raced as he braced for the next round. The storm was yet to unleash its full fury, but he was ready. He had to be. The applause began to fade, leaving a buzzing energy lingering in the air like the electric charge before a storm. David felt the warmth of validation wrap around him like a comforting blanket, but he also sensed the undercurrent of tension still swirling around the room. Harrison was not one to back down easily. As the crowd settled, Harrison regained his composure, straightening his lapel with a calculated ease. "Inspirational, David," he replied, his voice smooth yet laced with contempt. "But here's a reality check: this gala isn't just about dreams and communities. It's about raising funds, and the balance sheets will always matter." David's heart sank slightly. He understood the stakes but refused to let fear dictate his next move. "I agree, Harrison. Numbers do matter, but when they overshadow our humanity, they become hollow," he countered, leaning into the microphone a bit more. "It's about balance. And right now, perhaps you're too caught up in your metrics to see the human element we're discussing." A ripple moved through the crowd again, a blend of shock and nods of approval. He caught Marissa's eye. She smiled, a glimmer of pride shining back at him, grounding his resolve. He took a deep breath and pressed on. "This is an opportunity. An opportunity to marry ambition with compassion. Just imagine what can we accomplish if we harness our talents to uplift those who often go unseen." The room was still now, and David could hear the faintest whispers of agreement. This wasn't just about the funds but about the very fabric of the community they were serving. Yet Harrison wasn't ready to concede. "You preach unity and compassion. All fine and dandy, but what about those investors who are waiting for hard results? The world we live in demands more than lofty ideals. It demands influence." His voice rose, and the slight tremor hinted at his frustration. "If you don't show tangible outcomes, you risk losing everything you've built." A thought flashed through David's mind: the children he had met during his community outreach, eyes bright with hope, despite their struggles. And what if we dare to dream bigger than the outcomes? David responded, feeling the swell of emotions surge within him. What if our impact isn't measured just by money but by the lives we change? Each child we help, each family we lift from despair. Can't those stories be just as transformative? The crowd erupted again, and David felt the fire within him grow. The applause thundered, echoing off the walls, resonating with his own determination. This was the moment he wanted them to remember: the night they chose to believe in purpose over profit, but Harrison's face was darkening. You think this is a game, David? You think dreams alone can sustain our mission? You're about to find out that life's not fair, and it's rough out there. His tone had shifted to icy, his eyes narrowing like a predator sizing up its prey. David met Harrison's gaze, the steel behind his own. No, it's not a game. But this is about rising together to fight that unfairness. He stood tall before the audience, conviction radiating from him. We can do more than survive, we can thrive if we commit to one another. We have to let our values guide us. He turned slightly to catch Marissa's expression, a blend of pride and hope. The energy in the room swirled around him, pushing him, urging him on. Tonight, let us write a new story. One where we defy the odds, where compassion fuels success. As the waves of applause surged again, David knew the fight was far from over. Harrison was still looming, a storm cloud in this dance of light. David couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle had just begun. Harrison wouldn't go quietly. He sensed a brewing from the other side. Something was coming, and it was bound to be explosive. The spotlight dimmed slightly, but David's heart raced with anticipation. What would Harrison's next move be? And how could he prepare for a storm that felt imminent? David took a moment to soak in the exhilaration of the crowd. Their faces, filled with a mixture of admiration and determination, fueled his passion. But just as quickly, the applause died down, leaving an uneasy silence hanging in the air. Harrison, not one to be easily silenced, stepped closer to the podium, his demeanor icy and sharp. You talk about compassion, but let us not forget the reality. The world runs on money, not sentiment. If you can't deliver results, you're leading them down a dead end. The tension crackled. David squared his shoulders, aware that the stakes were higher than he had initially thought. Harrison, you're right. Money is important. But it's not the only measure of success. We have a chance to build something greater, to inspire change that transcends the balance sheets. His heart raced, but he stood firm, his voice steady. You can recite all the buzzwords you wish, but they won't pay the bills. Harrison shot back, frustration evident in his words. David's mind raced with thoughts of the community he had unveiled in his earlier talks. The kids whose laughter filled their classrooms like music, the families whose lives were transformed by small acts of kindness. What about the joy we create? The lives we impact? Isn't that a measure worth striving for? He asked, his voice rising, filled with newfound fervor. The audience breathed in, a collective gasp. David could feel the weight of their thoughts. Uncertainty hung in the air, charged like a live wire. He glanced at Marissa again. Her unwavering support bolstered his resolve. Every dollar raised is a step toward brighter futures for those who need it most. Let us redefine what success looks like together. Harrison scoffed, but David saw a crack in his armor, a flicker of doubt. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated this level of pushback. Suddenly, a hand shot up from the back of the crowd. But what happens when goodwill isn't enough? It was a voice he didn't recognize, but the fear in it echoed throughout the hall. Heads turned, and murmurs swept across the room. David nodded in acknowledgement. A valid question. We need financial support to sustain our vision, but if we anchor ourselves solely in profit, we risk losing our essence. That's the tipping point we face. We can gather resources while staying true to our mission. It's not just about money, it's about heart, grit, and unwavering determination. The audience began to pulse with energy again, the flicker of hope igniting their spirits. Yet, as Harrison stood, unyielding, David felt the rising tide of something more sinister within the man's demeanor. He was simmering, ready to retaliate, and David braced himself for the onslaught. Glad to see you're passionate, David. But let us see how much longer that lasts when reality slams down on you. You'll learn the hard way. David clenched his fists, determination tightening around his heart. He would not back down. Challenge accepted, he declared, the words bold and defiant. As the crowd erupted into applause once again, David's own heart beat louder. The night felt alive, electric with possibility. But in the depths of his soul, he knew that this confrontation was merely the beginning. He had sparked a fire, but as he scanned the crowd, he couldn't ignore the unease flickering in their eyes. What would happen after this speech? Would Harrison's threat linger in the shadows, lurking like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike? With the stakes now higher than ever, David faced an uncertain future, and he had to decide whether his vision would light the way or plunge him into the darkness of failure. As excitement twisted into trepidation, he realized the storm was just beginning. Would he weather it, or would it consume him whole? As the applause faded, David felt a heaviness settle over him. The crowd, once filled with enthusiasm, now wore expressions of concern. Whispers swept through the gallery, people casting glances at each other, unsure of what to make of Harrison's bombastic challenge. Marissa reached out, her fingers gently squeezing David's arm. "You did great," she said, but he could see the worry etched in her brow. "But I think Harrison's right about one thing." David's stomach twisted. "What do you mean? What if he's right about the money?" She replied softly, her voice barely audible over the remaining murmurs. "What if goodwill isn't enough?" He shook his head, discontent swirling within him. David's entire purpose hinged on the belief that change could come from compassion, from a collective will to lift one another. The kids, the families, they depended on it. "No, we can make it work. We will find a way," he insisted, though doubt crept in like shadows at dusk. The event continued, but David found it hard to engage. He forced smiles as people approached him, praising his speech, but inside, the thrill of the moment was being sucked dry by the fear of failure. He caught sight of Harrison across the room, a smug look on his face as he chatted with a group of supporters. David could feel the weight of their approval, the choices that lay before him. "Where are you going?" Marissa called as David turned toward the exit. "To think," he replied. Outside the building, cool night air hit his face, refreshing yet harsh. The city lights twinkled like stars, a vivid reminder that the world continued to spin, oblivious to his internal turmoil. He walked through the familiar streets, the rhythmic sounds of the city wrapping around him, the hum of passing cars, distant laughter, and the notes of a street musician playing a hopeful tune. It was comforting, a reminder of the resilience around him. But there was still that voice in the back of his mind. What if goodwill couldn't save them? Moments later, David stumbled upon a park where children were playing, their joy infectious. He watched them, a pang of longing in his heart. "Why do I even doubt?" he murmured to himself, tears prickling his eyes. "This is why." As he walked deeper into the park, he felt a sense of clarity. The vision he had for the community was still alive. Maybe it was naive to think about change without the backing of cold hard cash, but there was something more profound at stake: human connection, community strength. That was invaluable, wasn't it? David's passion resurfaced, igniting a fire in his belly. He felt resolute once more. The battle with Harrison would only be one chapter in this story. He couldn't let a single voice drown out the hopes of so many. Suddenly, a radiant laughter pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to find a group of teenagers gathering around a small table, where a younger boy was opening a simple birthday cake. They were singing, the joyful sound punctuating the air with warmth. "This is what matters," David whispered, as he turned back toward the gala, more determined than ever to involve his community in a conversation about their future. But as he approached the entrance, the tall shadows of doubt and Harrison's menace loomed larger in his mind than ever. How could he lead this movement while grappling with uncertainty? As he stepped through the doors, ready to face both supporters and critics alike, the question burned in his mind. Could he truly transform skepticism into solidarity? The night was young, but the stakes were monumental. He clenched his fists, resolved to find an answer. Would he rise to the challenge or risk everything he had fought for? The journey lay ahead, and the path to redemption had never felt so perilous. As David stepped back into the gala, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Friends and foes mingled, their voices blending into a low hum that echoed his heartbeat. He could feel the weight of their eyes, each gaze affecting him like a subtle caress or a cold draft. Marissa was there, her shoulders squared, determination etched across her features. "You okay?" she asked, concern softening her tone. David took a deep breath and nodded. "Let us do this." Together, they walked toward the center of the room, where groups were still buzzing with energy. He could hear snippets of conversation, praises mingling with the murmurs of doubt. It didn't help that Harrison was weaving through the crowd, a charismatic serpent, sowing seeds of dissent with every word he spoke. "I can't believe he would challenge you like that," Marissa said as they approached a small gathering. "People want to support you, David. Just show them what you stand for." As David scanned the faces before him, he felt invigorated. He had a choice to let fear cloud his message or to ignite hope. Finally, he took to the makeshift stage where a few remnants of glittering decorations still dangled. Adjusting the microphone, he felt the smooth surface beneath his fingers, grounding him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady but brimming with earnestness. "I'm grateful for your support. But tonight isn't just about a gala or a challenge. It's about our vision, a vision backed by our community's strength." The murmurs quieted, slowly giving way to attentive stares. For the first time, he felt their collective curiosity. "We can lean on goodwill," David continued, gaining momentum. "It's the foundation of our resolve. But we need to pair that with action. We need to mobilize resources, gather funds, yes. But we also need to harness something more powerful: belief." He could see Marissa's encouraging nod from the front, which strengthened his resolve. "Together, we can weave a fabric of support that no amount of skepticism can tear apart. I believe this community needs more than money. It needs connection, trust, and the shared determination to uplift one another." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air. The silence was palpable, almost electric. He could hear a quiet shuffling behind him, heads turning to catch sight of Harrison. "You're a dreamer, David." A voice called out from the back. "And that's not enough." Someone else chimed in, almost as if they had rehearsed it. "Dreamers create change," David responded, refusing to back down. "Every innovation, every movement began with one person daring to believe. I realize it seems daunting, especially against those like Harrison who, let us be honest, thrive off division. But we can choose to rise above." Harrison pushed his way through the crowd, disdain curling his lips. "You really think you can rally these people without a solid plan? Goodwill may warm your heart, but it won't pay the bills." David's heart raced, but he kept his tone firm. "Action pays the bills, Harrison. But belief pays for generations to come." The crowd stirred, some nodding, others narrowing their eyes. David stepped closer, his voice lower but commanding. "What we have in this room is a chance to start fresh, to redefine what it means to lead with our hearts. To show everyone seated here that we can turn barriers into bridges." The crowd erupted, some clapping while others called out. The energy shifted, and he could feel a wave of support crashing into place. It was infectious. People were standing a little taller, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. That he locked eyes with Marissa. She was beaming, her faith in him unwavering. As the applause hummed in the air, he knew he had tapped into something essential. But while victory felt close, a lingering doubt wrapped around his heart. Was this promise of change strong enough to withstand Harrison's schemes? And amidst this newfound momentum, how could David ensure the movement didn't fall flat before it even began? Just as that thought settled, he noticed someone near the back clutching a flyer with an alarming headline. Panic swept through him. Was everything he built at risk of collapse before it could truly shine? The night continued to pulse with promise, but the uncertainty cast a shadow. David knew this was only the beginning. What would the next step look like, and would he be ready to face whatever challenges were coming his way? In the weeks that followed the gala, David Carter poured every ounce of his passion into the charitable campaign. It wasn't easy. The whispers of doubt lingered, Harrison's voice echoed in his mind like a relentless drumbeat. But each time he felt his resolve shaking, he remembered the wide, hopeful eyes of the children he spoke for. They drove him. The initiative, dubbed Bridges to Tomorrow, took off in ways David had only dreamed of. Influential executives who once hesitated began to embrace the vision, inspired not only by his passion but the palpable sense of unity in the room that night. They saw the potential to create something real, striving to uplift those who felt lost. Marissa led workshops alongside David, her warmth and enthusiasm sparking motivation in their volunteers and mentors, yet, Harrison didn't let the tide shift without a fight. He published an article questioning David's approach, casting doubt on whether passion could indeed lead to tangible change. Without cash flow, dreams die, he declared, stoking fear amongst investors. Standing at the brink of his first major hurdle, David felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. There were moments when doubt threatened to consume him, especially with headlines portraying him as an idealist. Would anyone truly believe in a movement defined by compassion over cold, hard cash? But during nights of reflection, he'd remember his grandmother's voice. You build a legacy not by how much you earn, but by how deeply you love. Investing in others is wisdom, son. Those words fueled David's fire. Determined, he organized a town hall. The goal? To rally the community, proving to them, and to himself, that change could be tangible and rooted in their shared experiences. It was a bold move, one that he hoped would stitch together hearts and minds in a unified front. As the day approached, he prepared intensely, gathering stories from individuals directly impacted by the initiative. On the day of the event, he stood before a packed auditorium, nervous yet resolute. The energy in the room crackled with anticipation, filled with community members, doubt on some faces, hope on others. Today, we transcend, he started, his voice steady. It isn't about whether I can convince you, but whether we all can ignite a greater purpose together. He spoke of the children who dreamed of more, of families longing for opportunity. He shared their journeys, instilling ambition where fear once reigned. David could see their curiosity becoming hope, glistening in their eyes. The more he spoke, the more he could feel the community's heartbeat aligning with his vision. One man stood and shared a personal story of struggle. The room began to ripple with voices joining, each testimony forging connections that transcended socio-economic divides. As the emotion swelled, every individual in attendance felt the shift. It wasn't just David on the stage anymore, it was a collective. They had risen, united for their children and their future. The applause resounded, a thunderous affirmation of their pact for change, but even as they celebrated, uncertainty loomed within David. The vibrant atmosphere was enough to turn the tide for many, but would it be enough to sway those in powerful positions who still clutched their cash offers tightly? A few days later, during a meeting with potential investors, the challenge arose. Harrison's voice cut through the noise, his presence as commanding as ever. You think passion alone will win them over, David? He leaned back, hands folded as if mocking. Let us be honest, without profits, your dreams are just fantasies. People need to see bottom lines. The words, slick and barbed, poked at David's heart. Yet, he stood taller than before, anchored by the community's resolve. Harrison, we're building bridges, not just accounting ledgers. Our success won't be measured only by dollars but by lives transformed. Around the room, murmurs of agreement stirred, and David felt the shift in energy. The momentum was shifting. Investors began to see promise in his plan. They could mix philanthropy with purpose and, in return, create a legacy exceeding mere financial metrics. At the conclusion of the meeting, a formidable investor offered to finance a pilot program that coupled mentorship with skill development. David felt a swell of pride, but something deeper stirred within him. This was more than just funding, this was the birth of something profound. A movement was blooming. As David shared his campaign updates with the community during their weekly meeting, their faces were alive, the hopes glimmering brighter than before. And amid the laughter and enthusiasm, he felt a weight lift, a full heart, tears of gratitude ready to spill, joy radiating amongst them. But then, he was met with an unexpected challenge, an invitation for a public debate with Harrison, live-streamed for audiences to witness. A chill shot down his spine. The stakes felt monumental. Even as his pulse quickened, he was reminded of the authenticity behind his mission. "Let us show the world what we can accomplish," Marissa encouraged, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. "You're not just defending your ideas, David. You're fighting for those kids who deserve a better tomorrow." Finalizing his speech, David felt a sense of fierce determination. Whether he stood alone or together with the community behind him, this was his moment. The opposition would not silence hope. He was not just a CEO, he was their voice, empowered by love and belief. When the debate night arrived, he entered the arena with a race of adrenaline coursing through him. He felt the anticipation surge like waves crashing against shorelines. Harrison was polished and poised, but David had heart, and tonight, he was prepared to show the power of unity over greed. As the debate began, he took everything he had learned, the stories, the passion, the undeniable truth that a community could rise. The audience leaned in, fingers crossed, whispering hopes to one another. David reflected back on that gala night, reminding himself who he was standing for: the grandparents, the parents, the children. Here's to building bridges, Harrison. Let us choose uplifting lives over weighing ledgers, hope over fear. The crowd erupted into applause, and in that moment, David knew he had done right. As the evening concluded, standing amidst warmth and acceptance, he inhaled deeply. The storm that had loomed overhead seemed to dissolve, revealing a horizon painted with vibrant hues, a future filled with promise, a community ready to thrive. And just like that, David realized that even in a world filled with skeptics, they could create ripples of change together, supported by love, belief, and a vision for tomorrow. This was only the beginning. Now, don't you dare miss out. This is the time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that uplift and inspire. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread the message of hope and transformation. Comment below with your thoughts and feelings about this incredible journey. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's keep the ripple effect going.